05's attention. What if the supplement screaming eternal youth is really just a shiny distraction? 510's authority. I'm Walter Crane's science journalist for a decade, turning over every biotech rock you've seen in major publications. 1015's agenda. Here you'll watch the actual data unfold, hear a top researcher's unfiltered take, and decide if the magic matches the marketing. 1530's disclaimer. Everything you're about to see comes from real interviews and studies you can actually track down. Names got tweaked to keep folks private. Any overlap is pure coincidence. 3045's first source. Dr. Elena Vargas' Cell Metabolism whiz got handed the latest headlines and just stared. I can't believe we're still slapping hope on a label and calling it data. Source: NAD plus levels drop with age. NMN and NR give a small bump in animals, but human proof is thin. Open hook with disbelief reaction. Dr. Vargas's eyebrows knitted like storm clouds as she flipped through a glitzy catalog. NMN and NR creatine old molecules with new glossy coats, she muttered, thumb hovering over reverse aging. NMN does it, she exhaled, studio lights glinting off the doubt pooling in her eyes. Briefly introduce NAD plus NMN and NR creatine trends. NAD plus, the cell's own energy coin, keeps electrons flowing through every life-sustaining pathway. As birthdays pile up, NAD plus dwindles, a fact drilled into thousands of animal studies. Enter NMN and NR, the upstream precursors hawked as NAD plus turbochargers. Market records show NAD plus boosters blowing past $200 million, while creatine long the gym rat's best friend got repackaged in anti-aging wraps. Show the scientist's personal moment of doubt. Dr. Vargas remembered the exact second she cracked open a fresh NMN container. Pharma-grade stamped on the label, peer-reviewed stacks beside it. She ran the numbers and NAD plus barely blinked. I expected at least a nudge, she admitted, voice tighter than expected. Instead, the numbers matched placebo day one. The camera held on her hands, glass vials clicking like nervous castanets, posed the central question. So does NMN NAD plus live up to the hype, or is it just a slick story built on thin air? That's the puzzle we're tackling, layering the evidence. First, the bedrock claim, NAD plus fades with time. A 2020 mouse deep dive showed 30–40% drops in older rodents versus youngsters. Source: NMN and NR nudged NAD plus upward in animals, but the team stressed human proof is scant. Second, human trials. Middle-aged volunteers swallowed NMN daily for 3 months. NAD plus metabolites ticked up, yet insulin sensitivity and cholesterol stayed flat. Source: biochemical ripples never rippled into real-world gains. Third, NR's tail. One trial proved oral NR lifts blood NAD plus levels, proving the compound actually circulates. Source: the catch. We need years more data to know if this even matters, the authors wrote. Fourth, NIH weighs in. Their official sheet admits precursors raise NAD+, yet stops short of green-lighting anti-aging miracles. Source: a polite way to say the gap yawns wide between lab numbers and label boasts. Finally, creatine's role. FDA nods and calls it probably safe, but that's it. No age reversal stamps, no peer-reviewed miracles wiping out muscle loss. Source: narrative tension. Back in her lab, Dr. Vargas's eyes locked on the NMN assay, numbers flickering like dying stars. If human data are this spotty, she murmured, the whole industry's a house of cards. The cut swung to racks of supplements, all whispering youth in a bottle. Science on one side, shiny bottles on the other, visual whiplash guaranteed, closing the cold open. We're standing where science meets shelf space. Next up, we'll rip apart every claim, stress test every study, and let you choose breakthrough or bunk. Don't go anywhere. NAD plus nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide acts as a molecular hub, ferrying electrons in essentially every living cell. It powers oxidative metabolism, powers DNA repair enzymes, and keeps sirtuins, a family of proteins tied to stress resistance and longevity, in check. As we get older, NAD plus levels in blood and tissues dip, a pattern that shows up across mammals. Source: that drop isn't just a neat biochemical footnote. Lower NAD plus lines up with weaker mitochondria and less metabolic flexibility. Since this molecule sits smack in the middle of energy generation and genome upkeep, supplement makers have painted NAD plus precursors, nicotinamide riboside NR and nicotinamide mononucleotide NMN, as anti-aging boosters. The pitch is straightforward: give the body the building blocks, boost NAD plus, and let the cascade of benefits roll in. That tale strikes a chord with a crowd hungry for a shortcut to youthful vigor, and it's powering a multi-billion-dollar market. Science, however, paints a more nuanced picture. In a 2020 animal study, giving NMN to old mice lifted NAD plus levels and nudged a few metabolic health markers upward, but those findings stayed locked inside rodent. Source: human trials are far scarcer and far less conclusive. One double-blind, randomized trial gave oral NMN to healthy middle-aged adults and measured blood NAD plus metabolites before and after a 12-week stint. The team saw a modest bump in NAD plus intermediates, yet the main clinical readouts insulin sensitivity, lipid profile, and body composition stayed basically unchanged. Source. Another study turned its eye to NR, a different NAD plus precursor. Participants took escalating doses over 8 weeks, and their blood NAD plus levels climbed in step with the dose. Even with that biochemical uptick, the authors warned that longer-term studies are needed before anyone can claim functional benefits. Source. The pattern repeats itself, the chemistry shifts, yet the downstream health outcomes stay unproven. The NIH Office of Dietary Supplements offers a sober take. It admits that NR and NMN can lift systemic NAD+, but it stresses that there is insufficient evidence to support claims of anti-aging or disease prevention effects. Source. Put another way, the biochemistry is real, but the clinical promise remains hypothetical. Looking at the study designs, a handful of consistent gaps pop up. First, sample sizes sit around 30 to 50 participants, far too tiny to catch subtle metabolic shifts or to generalize across diverse groups. Second, the intervention windows rarely stretch beyond 3 months, a span too short to catch long-term physiological remodeling. Third, many trials lean on surrogate biomarkers, blood NAD plus levels, instead of hard clinical endpoints like frailty scores or cognitive decline. These methodological limits matter because they leave room for overinterpretation. A modest bump in a metabolite translates easily into a headline: NMN boosts NAD plus, the body's anti-aging fuel. The nuance that the rise might be fleeting, that downstream pathways stay unchanged, and that the study was underpowered gets lost in translation. Marketing tactics seize on that very loss of nuance. Influencers and celebrities flood social media with testimonials that read like personal success stories. I started NMN at 45 and my energy levels skyrocketed. Those anecdotes lack control groups, blinding, or any objective measure. Similarly, product packaging sprinkles buzzwords clinically proven, scientifically backed, even when the underlying data are still preliminary. Regulatory language adds yet another layer of confusion. The FDA's stance on dietary supplements, illustrated by labeling creatine as generally recognized as safe, makes clear that safety doesn't equal endorsement of specific health claims. Source. The agency doesn't evaluate NMN or NR for efficacy, yet the lack of a warning can be misread as approval. Altogether, the effect is a market narrative that outpaces the science. Companies point to the 2020 animal work, the modest NAD plus lifts in human trials, and the NIH's nod that the precursors do raise NAD plus. Then they leap to conclusions about longevity, skin elasticity, or cognitive sharpness, claims the current literature doesn't back up. A responsible take hinges on two questions. Does the supplement raise NAD plus levels, and does that elevation translate into measurable health benefits? The answer to the first is yes, modestly in both animals and humans. The answer to the second is still unknown. To wrap up this segment, think about what a solid evidence base would need. Large, diverse cohorts, at least a year of follow-up, and outcomes that matter to patients' mobility, cognition, disease incidence. Until those data show up, the wise stance is skepticism, not dismissal. The chemistry is real, the hype is amplified, and the truth lands somewhere in between. Leaning back, the scientists stared at the numbers and bluntly declared, the evidence is inconclusive. A slight uptick in NAD+ observed in mice doesn't automatically mean the same effect will show up in people's source. Put the flashy headlines next to the real study results, and you can see the discrepancy balloon. Longevity commercials tout reversal of aging, but the double-blind NMN study in middle-aged volunteers only nudged NAD+ metabolites a bit and didn't move the needle on metabolic health after a 12-week run. Source. In the same vein, nicotinamide riboside NR raised blood NAD+ in a dose-responsive way, yet scientists caution that only longer-term studies can confirm any real functional payoff. Source. The NIH Office of Dietary Supplements drives the point home. Precursors may lift NAD+ levels, but the data aren't strong enough to back anti-aging or disease prevention claims. Source. Put simply, the science still lags behind the hype. Under that shiny wrapper, a cash-making engine is quietly humming. Venture capital cash, influencer deals, and patent stacks have turned NAD+ precursors into a multi-million-dollar playground. Firms bring in celebrity scientists to tout their pills, and those same researchers put out papers that intentionally showcase modest biochemical tweaks without blowing up the clinical significance. The upshot: a feedback cycle where booming sales bankroll more research, and that research fuels the next batch of ads. Even the language regulators use shows the same tug-of-war. The FDA says creatine, a well-studied supplement, is generally recognized as safe. yet it won't back any health claim source. In contrast, NMN and NR linger in a gray area, letting makers label them supports healthy aging without a formal nod, simply because the agency hasn't been asked to vet efficacy claims. So what should you walk away with after staring at the numbers, charts, and shiny press releases? First off, the human data we have are from tiny, short-term trials that only show biochemical tweaks, not the blockbuster lifespan boost you see on social feeds. Second, the money behind the hype is real, and it steers the story just as much as the science itself. Bottom line, NMN and its NAD plus buddies aren't proven anti-aging cures. They give NAD plus a modest bump, yet any talk of reversing cellular aging stays speculative until bigger, longer studies show real health gains. As one researcher put it, we need tougher long-term studies before we can suggest these products for longevity. Keep in mind, the lure of a quick fix usually outstrips the slow grind of scientific proof. Until the data catch up, the safest play is to stay skeptical, stick to solid dietary guidelines, and keep an eye on peer-reviewed work that measures real health, not just chemical markers. So let's get real here. Critical thinking is basically our compass that keeps us from wandering into those hype-driven markets. When you see a headline that claims NMN will rewind the clock, your first question should be, what does the actual peer-reviewed literature say, right? In animal studies, we see some modest NAD plus boost source, but human trials are still pretty sparse if you ask me. There was this one double-blind trial in middle-aged adults that reported a small rise in NAD plus metabolites, but no measurable health improvements after 12 weeks. That's kinda important to note, source. Even nicotinamide riboside, which is like a cousin of NMN, raised blood NAD plus levels in a dose-dependent way. But researchers are warning us that longer studies are needed to actually prove any functional benefits, source. The NIH's Office of Dietary Supplements is reminding us that just because we raise NAD plus levels, it doesn't automatically mean we'll see anti-aging or disease prevention effects. That's a pretty big gap, source. This whole gap between biochemical change and real-world outcomes is exactly why skepticism is so essential if you think about it. When we take a step back to question the data, we're basically protecting both our wallets and our well-being. That's just good sense. So before you go and add another bottle to your shelf, take some time to dig into the primary sources, okay? Look for those randomized, double-blind designs, sample sizes, and follow-up periods that actually match your health goals. That's how you make informed decisions. If a claim is based on a single animal experiment or some marketing blog, you should probably treat it with a healthy dose of caution, right? The same level of diligence applies to any supplement, whether it's creatine, which is deemed safe by the FDA but never actually endorsed for specific health claims source, or the newest longevity pill that's hitting the market. If you found this breakdown useful, go ahead and hit subscribe and join a community that values evidence over hype. We could all use a little more of that. Our choices have a ripple effect, shaping the market that future innovators will be chasing. That's kinda cool to think about. Together, we'll keep the conversation grounded in science, not speculation. That's the goal anyway. Finally, ask yourself, when you choose a product that promises a better future, are you really buying confidence, or are you actually investing in proven health?